Salutations everyone, this is Razor bringing you guys another Overwatch video where today we're going to talk about the new perk system and how it will pertain to DPS. I'm just going to be focusing on them particularly because I feel like DPS is in a really weird, not so great spot and hasn't been for a while, and I think that's one of the issues with the current meta, current state of the game. I'm not going to go into like specific perks, like give you a rundown of all of them, because all the info is out there. And if I did that, this video wouldn't be, 14 minutes long or whatever it is, obviously. But I do want to talk about kind of the perk system in general and how it can pertain to fixing or, potentially fixing an issue with DPS. Don't mind me as I just get play of the game right here. Because Hanzo, and when he got a buff, a couple of patches ago, it was like, all right, is Hanzo back? And then I played a game, this game, or maybe a game very similar to it in score, and I was like, oh man, maybe he's back. Maybe I'll make a video on, is Hanzo back? Did this buff help? And then I didn't have a game this good for a while, and it's like, no, he's definitely not back. He was, still bottom 2 in every single rank in the game. But this perk system, I think, is a great thing. When we first heard about the perk system, either the verbiage made it sound like, or many people assumed it was going to be a role-specific perk. Like DPS can choose between these 3 or 4 perks, and tank can choose between these, or supports can choose between these. And obviously that was going to run into issues because not every character is going to benefit from all those perks. Like if you gave like DPS a reload passive, increase, that's not going to help Hanzo. So, it's just kind of like role passives have been, and they have changed. Those role passives have always benefited some characters way more than they have others. And this is just basically another role passive, but it's it's basically a character passive, but one that you unlock. So you get the first one. They say if you're playing like a control game, you'll get the first one maybe at the end of the first round, and you'll get the second one maybe at like halfway through or toward the end of the second round. So we have to keep that in mind, that these characters aren't getting both of these perks immediately. You're not going to have that second perk for most of the game, most of the time. So if one is really, really strong, it's going to sound a lot stronger than the impact it's going to have, because we're not going to have that ability most of the game. But we are going to be having that ability, and if it can make a really big impact, then that's definitely going to have an impact on that character's win rate, pick rate, how they synergize with the rest of the crowd. And, not every perk is going to be created equal. Some perks on characters are just going to be way better than other characters. If you took a look at like the rundown, there were definitely some characters. It's like, okay, well, that's nice. That's, a nice little quality of life thing here, or, an increased reload speed here, or something to do with your ult that makes it a little better in this situation, but not nearly as good as some of the characters got. Like Ashe got some really insane looking ones. Torbjorn got some really good ones. Symmetra, some people didn't think she got really good ones, but they all seemed really good in my eyes. Widowmaker, there's not really much you can do with her, so she's just not going to get good ones, which wasn't a very big surprise, but still something beneficial, something that can help. Another knob for the devs to twist and adjust to help make more characters fun, make more characters playable, and hopefully make the valley between who's good and who's bad a lot smaller, because right now that gully is pretty vast in the DPS category specifically. The last patch did help. Like, for instance, Tracer at all levels was like at the bottom, toward the bottom, not the very bottom. She wasn't like Hanzo numbers or anything like that, or even Sojourn numbers, who also got a buff recently. She is at the bottom, like pretty much everywhere, even below Hanzo somehow. I'm not really understanding how that works, because she got a buff and he didn't. Yeah, so like we've seen some steps in the right direction, but for the most part, for the last 6-7 months, Overwatch's DPS role has been in a really, really bad spot. You take a look at, your games, other people's games, from any level, or you just take a look at win rates overall on Overbuff or something like that. there's been a troubling trend for the last half year or so, and that's the characters that are really, really easy to use are the best characters in the game. And the characters that are really, really hard to use are the worst characters at the game. Across all levels. It's not like Tracer's, bad in bronze and really good at GM. No, like, for instance, if you go to GM right now, Tracer is, like, barely mid. And that's the highest she is anywhere. Everywhere else, like Master, she's low. Diamond, she's low. Everywhere else, you're gonna see Cassidy the same. He's gonna be the low, like, everywhere. But the characters that you see at the top are like the same characters pretty much throughout every single level. It's Symmetra, it's Torbjorn, it's Reaper, it's Junkrat. All really easy to use characters that don't require a lot of aim or movement, dexterity or cooldown management, like a lot of really spammy, stationary, easy stuff throughout all levels. There's your Torbjorn and Symmetra are always near the top. They just have been. Reaper always near the top. Junkrat was near the top a few months ago, but now is kind of sliding back. But still, he's like top 5 in I think every single rank. So right now, and that's trouble. And not in GM. He's like 7th in GM. But still, ahead of Tracer, ahead of Ashe, ahead of Genji, ahead of Cassidy, ahead of Sojourn, and it's troubling where you see like only 4 or 5 characters really be good everywhere. It's not different. It's not like Sombra is really really gold, but then falls off when you get to diamonds. Like no, she's just kind of low everywhere. I mean, every time I see a Sombra on the enemy team, they absolutely super hard carry pop off, but that's completely anecdotal. Venture was toward the top for quite a while, and now she is like toward the bottom of mid for everywhere else. But everywhere you see Symmetra, Reaper, Torbjorn, Junkrat, every single rank, they're all up there. Characters that just can give you way too much value for the little amount of skill that they require. And that's not like always the entire picture. Sometimes it's like how they can interact with the enemy tank or how they coincide with your tank. How do they pair up? And obviously like Torbjorn and Junkrat and Symmetra don't really like, they're not like, oh, they're good with dive. Although, remember when Overwatch 2 first launched and Symmetra like was high key the best dive attacker in the game because her teleporter and the shields that she had and the damage that she output, it was just like, man, she's a better diver than Tracer or Genji have been at any point. But regardless, these perks hopefully is going to be an answer to that. And it's interesting when you take a look at a character like Tracer. Tracer is just not a character that's given a lot of love from the balance team because she's historically been good at the highest levels and just kind of not present anywhere outside of that. And she goes through the limbo of like she gets nerfed and then unnerfed or slightly unnerfed and then nerfed and then slightly nerfed or unnerfed. It's just a cycle. It's like you got it right the first time, devs. You're going insane with the Tracer changes because you keep doing the same things and then undoing it. But if every character can kind of get more from their perks and Tracer only gets a little bit from her perks, then that can kind of like help balance it out to where it's like, all right, they don't have to end with hero bans. That's also going to shift some of their data. That's in competitive at every single rank. I believe they said at every single rank, but only in competitive. So I think that's a way of making more people happy. And I'm not sure, like right now, what would be picked to be banned. In all honesty, whenever Sombra is an issue, which comes and goes always, she will be banned. But I wouldn't say I see Tracers getting banned anytime in the future because she wasn't that prevalent. Maybe you'll see people pick Widowmaker to be banned, even though you only see a good one against you or on your team 3% of the time you see a Widowmaker. Maybe you see Ashe. Maybe you see Reaper. Maybe you see Pharah if the flyer synergy with her and Echo and Mercy is too good, right? Maybe you see Bastion. I don't know. He's annoying, but he has a low win rate. But then again, Hanzo has always been towards the bottom. Hanzo is just historically never good. He's never even reached the heights that Bastion ever has at low or pro play. And people will always complain about him. And so the devs are just always going to listen, regardless of the fact that he's just not very good. Still isn't. And his perks, funnily enough, don't seem that great. Like, all of them are helpful in some ways, but not nearly as good as some of the others when you take a look at what Torbjorn's perks can do, what Symmetra's perks can do. Those just seem pretty good. Some people don't think that Symmetra's perks are good, but maybe those aren't Symmetra players. I don't know. Definitely there are some characters that seem to, at least, you know, for the first season of perks, got to get way better perks, or at the very least, overall more good perks than not so good perks. And that's going to fluctuate every single season. But you take a look at Cassidy and it's like, are these perks really going to help them? No, they're not. Spoiler alert, they're not. I know the perks aren't out yet, but when you take a look at Sombra's perks and May's perks and Reaper's perks, sorry, Cassidy, your win rate and your pick rate is not going up when your quality of life is being heightened by like 3% and theirs are going up by like 20%. It's ridiculous. I know quality of life isn't like a stat that you can quantify, but still, some characters are getting way more bonuses from these than others, and you know, we're gonna see that. But you know, not every single perk is like a new ability or a new affectation to an ability that requires new graphics, or to bring an old graphic like Hanzo's Scatter Era or Bastion's old ultimate or Orissa's shield. You know, things that were gone are now back in the form of perks. While it's a great idea and I'm hopeful for it, obviously we're gonna have growing pains, and there's gonna be some things that, you know, the devs didn't think of, like, oh, combine this with that, and that's way too strong. Combine this and that with this hero, and that's gonna be meta from gold onward. You know, there's gonna be unforeseen consequences from this, and we're gonna have to feel it out, and then we're gonna get some balances. And then, you know, for each season we'll have new perks, and characters that were good aren't very good, and characters that were bad aren't very bad anymore. But that's the same with a lot of patches, but I think we're going to see it more so because this is just, it's like an additional ability, but there's going to be 2 of them. And it's going to tweak numbers on like fire rate and, you know, reload time and windows of burst damage. So I think it's good. Is the first iteration going to be good enough? Absolutely not. We're going to be beta testing for this entire first season, but I do think it's a great idea. But we have to be wary when we look at what's really good right now and making them stronger, and looking at what's not good right now and making them not very strong. It's not the way to go. It's a way to go, but I don't think it's the way to go. I'm hopeful, but hold my breath for now, because I know it can work, theoretically.